So good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure and an honor. My name is Professor Dr. RICKI LEVI, and I'm an assistant professor in the Jindal School of Environment and Sustainability. It's really an honor to be the moderator of this super fantastic and interesting topic that we are going to discuss, shifting goalpost, universities' role in achieving sustainable development. And before we're going to dwell and get into the depth of our topic, first of all, I want to present our most distinguished panelists that are from various places around the world. So we are really joining places and times throughout the planet. And I want to start first with Professor Dr. Ali CHEEMA. Is a distinguished economist whose research focuses on economic development with an emphasis of human capital, inclusion and economic mobility, gender dynamics, and political economy. Associated with Lahore University of Management Sciences, Pakistan since 1999, he has served distinguished years as an associate professor of economics and politics, director of the Mahbub Ul-Haq Research Center, chair of the economic department, and now as the Vice Chancellor. Dr. CHEEMA has been a member of the Board of Trustees of the Institute of Development Studies, Sussex, and was a founding member of the Stockholm Challenge Award-winning portal Relief Information System for Earthquake in Pakistan. Our second distinguished panelist is Professor Dr. ARIF SATRIA, and she's the rector of Institute Partinyan Bogor, currently known as the IPB University in Bogor, Indonesia. He was a dean of the Faculty of Human Ecology in IPB, and prior to that, he was a lecturer in the Department of Social Economies for Fisheries in the Faculty of Fisheries and Marine Science of IBB. He is currently a chairman of the Indonesian Muslim Intellectual Association. Notably, he was the advisor to the Indonesian Minister of Marine and Fisheries in 2012. Professor Arif SATRIA has been actively involved in the development of marine and fisheries policies since 2002, including in preparation of the Blue Economic Concept, as well as several governmental and ministerial regulations. Our third speaker is Dr. Kevin Argus from Australia. He's a driving force in the circular economy, leading RMIT University in the interdisciplinary efforts for sustainability as co-chair of the RMIT Circular Economy Hub and the co-lead of a cooperative research center, Food Waste Reduce Grant Project. Enabling collaborative innovation for food waste reduction, Kevin collaborates with industry leaders, including a technology entrepreneur and major retailers. The research focuses on optimizing technology to connect consumers with discounted, soon-to-expire food, creating sustainable social, environmental, and financial value for both retailers and consumers. And our fourth distinguished speaker is Miss ANDREA DEVERELL. ANDREA is a director of Sustainable Future Innovation at University of Limerick, Ireland. She has 25 plus years professional experience working in higher education and with industry in Ireland. Her roles have varied over time, but have all connected to organizational innovation, entrepreneurship, strategic foresight, and in the later part of her career to sustainability. And has a multidisciplinary perspective, having traveled across the disciplines as an undergrad of languages, a postdoctorate of innovation management. She is currently completing a doctoral study which examines how futures as a discipline enable the emergence of compelling collective vision within an organizational context. So that is a very brief introduction to our really distinguished speakers. And now I think we should shift for presenting our concept note, the theme of our session, which is universities' role in achieving sustainable development goals. So universities broadly focus on the creation and transmission of knowledge, which provides them with a unique place in society. Since time immemorial, universities have been significant forces in driving innovation, economic development, and societal well-being on a global, national, and local scale. A well-balanced university education is integral to accomplishment of strong, balanced, and sustainable growth, and therefore can go a long way in achieving sustainable development goals. So I would like each one of our panelists to take just a minute to have his own take on the general theme, and then we will dwell to a more specific question. Please. Professor Chema, if you wanna start, please.
You want me to start? Okay. I think sort of this is a very important shift that we're certainly talking about. If we think about sort of, development over the past century, there was a period where there was a utopia that as sort of nations grew in terms of income, you would have human welfare increasing. That sort of particularly, found its way in social democracy, in programs of social welfare. And then since the late 70s, there has been a shift where systematically, basically that commitment to social democracy and social welfare has been eroded with the rise of neoliberal and a utopia that, you unleash markets, that's going to create growth, and somehow a lot of these other dividends are going to follow. Now, the problem over here, if you go back, is that many of the problems that underpin the movement towards SDGs are what economists would call common goods or public goods. So you need kind of socialization. And that sort of disjuncture of moving back to very atomized individuals leading development kind of eroded that mission. Now that found its way basically mirrored in terms of what was happening in universities at some level, although, you have institutes of development and you have specialized programs that proliferated to meet a lot of these challenges, particularly around the UN mission. But when you look at systematically, when you look at basically disciplines and how disciplines were evolving, they became much more focused on method and theories rather than on these big questions. So, in terms of universities playing a role, I think there's tremendous need. I think the big question, and perhaps we can come to some understanding of that in this panel, is that how should universities repivot to become places which could very directly take a stake in this mission about social development?
Excellent. Thank you very much. Shall we proceed, please? Professor SATRIA, if you would like to add a few words, please.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I'd like to extend my appreciation to Jindal Global University for inviting IPB University to take part in this important session of the World University Summit. The theme of today's session on university role in achieving sustainable development goal is very much in line with the mission of IPB University. Just as a brief background, IPB is committed to expanding collaboration and networks worldwide to create significant impacts on society, not just in Indonesia, on a global scale. One of our main strengths is the field of agriculture and forestry, in which we currently rank number 51 in the world based on QS World University ranking, number 8 in Asia, number 1 in Southeast Asia. And moreover, recent achievement in this Time Higher Education Impact Ranking 2023 serve as a recognition of IPB commitment in our effort to promote United Nations 17 goals. And particularly, we rank number 1st globally for SDGs 8, number 9 for SDGs 1, and rank number 10 for SDGs 2. Nationally, IPB has received the Indonesian SDGs Action Award from government in 2022-2023, which also served as a testament on our mission to contribute significantly in achieving sustainable development goals. I'm sure we are all aware that the world is facing significant threat or issues. The interconnectedness and influence of climate change, environmental degradation, industrial revolution 4.0, and their impact on food security and energy production require integrated and sustainable approaches to address them. And responding to these global challenges, we are committed to continuously build educational ecosystems, research program, and community service that can enhance resiliency, transform mindset, future design, and practices to achieve sustainability, not just in the field of agriculture, but beyond. Research and innovation in particular hold an important key to cope with these challenges. And however, we must also be aware of the valley of innovation death due to the big gap between academic research and industrial application to solving real world issues. And today's forum would allow us to share our thoughts and experiences on transition that we promote to enhance university role as the catalyst and key actor in achieving SDGs. It is important to start with redesigning curriculum to make sure it meets future skills needed by our students, to prepare them to dive into their future role in the society and their professional career. IPB fosters a techno-socio-entrepreneurial ecosystem as the education model to meet future challenges, wherein the overarching goals is to incorporate research, innovation, and entrepreneurship. And of course, this ecosystem allows for IPB students to be directly involved with the local communities to contribute in the improvement of the local economy. One of IPB's signature community empowerment program is we call One Village, One CEO, or of. Through such a program, IPB students are immersed in the local community's livelihood with tasks to bring relevant IPB research and innovation relevant to the community in order to assist with local product development that can support the local economy. It is worth noting that through OFOC, One Village, One CEO, and other community empowerment program, up to now, IPB University has reached out, contributed to and nurture 4,500 villages within 29 provinces in Indonesia, which covers 6.1% of villages in Indonesia. And IPB University is committed to expand the coverage of our outreach programs to cover not only nationally, but also regionally and globally. For this, IPB established a variety of other programs and centers like Farmer Center and the digital and Digitani, digital platform to provide support to a wider community of smallholders. I'm excited to elaborate more about this program and exchange thoughts and ideas about these challenges during our sessions today, particularly on ways for a university to overcome these challenges and produce impactful solutions to the society. I also hope to open more avenues for collaborative effort with universities like in Asia and worldwide to creating impacts to achieve more sustainable and equitable. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your words. Please continue, Kevin or Andrea, who wants to say a few words. Please continue.
I can, if you like.
Yes.
Look, I think as my esteemed colleagues have already mentioned, sustainability is complex, and it involves innovative ways of looking at how we go about solving them. We've got planetary boundaries, which we're already starting to overstep. That's impacting society. We've got economic realities for industry. We've got government policy that's trying to then address and either incentivize or punish good and bad behaviors. And then you've got universities who sort of are the research hub for informing policy, for informing how industry can innovate products and deliver economic outcomes. And then you look at the way that universities have traditionally been set up, or the way they've become. So once upon a time, there was probably more sort of a holistic approach to looking at how research problems were addressed. And then from the 1970s onwards, we've had much more of a focus on slice and dice type of research, getting down to sort of the minuscule. And then within universities themselves, they tend to incentivize, or the whole system for academics is incentivizing publishing within discipline. So I'm in the business arena, and I've got involved as chair now, but in a circular economy hub, and we're doing interdisciplinary research. We're publishing in Q1 journals, which are not in the ABDC list. So what our university has only just done this year is actually create Q1 as the equivalent to an A in the ABDC ranking. Well, what does that do? It all of a sudden sends a signal to academics that if you do collaborate as you have been signaled to do so, you won't be penalized for it in terms of promotion. So what I see is some of the structural changes that then follow through from the strategy come from having academics looking at ways of working. But it's not just within universities. We need the boards of these like the ABDC for business and the equivalents in STEM and whatever, to actually start looking at whether they include journals that are promoting interdisciplinary research, and creating a bit of a narrative that it's not a second best, that there are different approaches and different ways of solving problems. We also need, and what we're seeing a bit more of, is the design of research collaborations between government, industry, and academia that's reshaping the value proposition. So in Australia, we have these collaborative research centres, and I'm involved in one with a food waste focus. There's $40 million. The government's basically put in a lot of money. It's multiple universities as stakeholders. It's multiple industry that get involved, and it's matched dollar for dollar. But the aim of it is that it produces economic impact, economic value for the industry partner. So it's actually a design that's designed to encourage industry to innovate and take a risk, because the whole project is about getting an outcome that services them, and that's part of the remit. And there's governance around that. And I think that also helps address some of the challenges we otherwise have with research, is how do we get industry partners to come on board if our incentives are around theoretical contribution and not necessarily about impact for them. So I might stop there, but I think that's sort of something that I've seen as a bit of an ecosystem thing that we're challenging.
Thank you very much. Fantastic. And I think it seems that if I kind of collect some of the insights that for other speakers till now, it seems that we really need to rethink some of the university kind of infrastructure and how we need to remodel them to a large extent. And I think maybe we can do a follow-up to these insights in the second round of questions. But please, Andrea, it's your turn.
Thank you so much, Ricky. First of all, I'd like to thank OP Jindal for the kind invite. I'm very excited to represent the University of Limerick today, and it's really, really nice to meet all my colleagues also on the panel. So my name is ANDREA DEVERELL. I have a very exciting role at the University of Limerick. It's a journey that I'm going to share a little bit of with you kind of over the next couple of minutes, and I think in some ways it leans into what the other speakers have said around the complexities of sustainability and the kind of transforming role of universities in terms of what is it we should be doing as higher educational institutions in that space. So maybe if I just kind of talk a little bit about our journey, there might be a couple of insights that might be useful as part of this conversation. So I suppose the first part of the conversation is around kind of the myopic view that is held by many higher education institutions in terms of what is sustainability. And 2 years ago, we were given the challenge at our university, first of all, just to define it, to say what is sustainability and what does it actually mean to our higher educational institution. And I suppose one of the insights, we brought together a bottom-up group of wonderful participants from right across our institution who represented everything from esteemed academics to students to suppliers on campus to partners so our full kind of and our regional ecosystem. And those individuals set about the task of defining sustainability. And one of the key learnings was it wasn't good enough to just see sustainability as goal 4, quality education, that we as a higher educational institution needed to take a much more holistic understanding of sustainability as a starting point for our endeavours. And so we landed on kind of 4 key grand challenges that we thought were appropriate. And in some ways, I think we were setting out to kind of translate the UN SDGs into the higher educational setting. And they were social, so understanding the complexities associated with social sustainability, economic, in terms of the huge shift that has to come at an economic level in order for us to transition towards any kind of sustainable future. Planetary, so obviously very much anchored in the environment and in planet and the huge challenges that we face globally in that space. And then the fourth one we added was governance. And governance became really important because as a university, we realized it wasn't enough to be doing, really high caliber research that was having impact. It wasn't enough to be teaching our students about sustainability, but we equally needed to understand how we as an institution could role model sustainable behaviors for wider society. So that was our starting point. Lots and lots of wonderful discussion, lots and lots of people participated and got involved in the process. So point one I'd like to make is sustainability is complex, and I think universities need to embrace the complexity of it as a starting point. Second point, if I have time to make it, is around the role of futures. So we're a little odd as a centre. We have what we call Sustainable Futures and Innovation as our centre title, for good reason, because we use strategic foresight and futures as a tool to help our organisation collectively imagine the future that we're working towards. That sounds very academic and conceptual, but it's very difficult to move an entire system or an entire university if we haven't got a collective vision of what success looks like. So a lot of our endeavour has been around using tools and methods associated with futures to collectively imagine what a sustainable university could look like or should look like in the future. And there's been some really, really interesting insights in terms of what it is to have a collective vision and how that motivates collective action within the higher educational space. And then my final comment, and I will stop then because I love this topic clearly, is the importance of place. So I know we're global organizations and we've all got complex challenges, but most of these are very specific to our place. So what we're trying to unpack at our university is how do we start with our place and then how do we share insights globally so that as a broader society, we can begin to move, but we also understand the nuances of sustainability in our local places. Thank you.
Very much, everyone. That was fantastic. And I think that now maybe we should dwell a little bit into being more concrete. And before we're going to talk about what can be university contribution to other stakeholder, I suggest maybe we should take the next round to be a little bit more specific about what the current changes that needs to be done within the institution, which is called university, in order for it to embrace and enhance and to make the implementation of the SDGs a very concrete one. If please, Professor CHEEMA, if you wanna start.
I think I want to start with what Kevin was saying. I think there's this kind of challenge, which is really, if you look at the incentives of academics, they've been around disciplinary publications. So you've set up a career ladder that is, in some sense, reflecting that incentive structure. And you're talking about these challenges, which sort of not only cut across disciplines, but also require that knowledge to be deployed to have impact. And typically universities have not really thought a lot about how that deployment would work. And I think there are differences in terms of where you are in the world. So in institutional systems or institutionalized systems, where accountability mechanisms work, where basically you have institutional capacity, you have research funding available, you could foster the kind of partnerships that Kevin and ANDREA were talking about. But in other parts of the world where you have institutionalized structures which are weak, accountability is weak, research funding and collaborative funding is not available, then you have to think about very, very different models. So, what we've been very successful at doing at the Lahore University of Management Sciences is that we are doing a lot of sort of frontier research on questions around climate, around sort of clean energy, around sort of the social politics of climate change and sustainability. A lot of that is showing up in the impressive quality of our research publications. But a big sort of challenge that we foresee is that how do we kind of pivot that knowledge to start to have impact? We're largely predominantly an undergraduate university, which has now started to grow graduate programs. And I think we need to really start thinking at the basic level, which is one, we have to think about curriculum in a way which gets people in, students invested in questions rather than tools of the disciplines. And I think that's kind of missing. It really doesn't matter what the disciplinary architecture is in some sense, but the first thing is, do you get does your curriculum and your pedagogy get students to come at disciplines from questions, and can you foster those questions early on? The second thing, which I think we're seeing is really important, is particularly in the context that we're in, which is Pakistan, where not only are there huge challenges of sustainability, but also governance, that we also have to basically embed the notion of citizenship. So whether you're kind of studying technology or coming at it from those angles or more humanity and social sciences angles, the role that both researchers and students can play in terms of citizenship, or the citizenship equation, has to become part of the curriculum that you set about. The third thing is really that we have to, and this is just my view, and I've just taken over as Vice Chancellor, and that's one of the conversations that I'm trying to open up in the university. In the context that we're in, I think we have to start to see universities as spaces of civic action, right? So it's not just about sort of creating the publications. I mean, we have to protect that, because I'm a big believer in peer-reviewed publications because of sort of quality and the fact that there's a particular rigor that comes with it. But we also have to really start to think about universities as spaces of transformation, not only about the journey of students, but also in terms of societal and civic action that can result, and a place where civic collaborations can happen. Because we have the big word that I've been seeing a lot over the past 2 decades is policy. The notion that we can actually take evidence to shift policy. But what happens when the governance framework is in disarray and accountability is weak? Then it's not sufficient to have good ideas or the model that I'm going to produce evidence and create a eureka moment in the mind of a leader is, I think, a problematic model. The question is, how do I shape debate? How do I create pressure? How do I see those things? And I think those would be, we have to have innovative ways and experiments with how do we create what I'm calling a community of action, which has scholars as part of that particular community. And how do we, going back to some of the points that other speakers were raising, how do we tie the career incentive structure of academics to that call, as it were? I'll stop there.
Thank you very, very much. Please, shall we continue? Professor SATRIA, please, if you want to add a few things.
Pursuit of such ambitious global goals that rooted to complex issues require workforce that is not only well equipped with the necessary skills, but also capable of thinking and working in a transdisciplinary manner. There is a need for a collective shift of perspective of academia from working independently or in silos, performing interdisciplinary or even transdisciplinary academic collaborations. And by breaking down traditional silos and fostering collaboration across diverse fields of science and expertise, we can generate more impactful innovation and knowledge that drive transformative change in society. The mindset shift may take time, so it can be accelerated by a strong commitment by the university leaders through clear policies and top-down supportive programs that can foster the right collaborative ecosystem. Another important measure that's imperative in facing these challenges is establishing a supportive ecosystem that's driven by a clear vision. This vision is very challenging, and it is very, very important to drive our journey. And IPB has a goal to become a global sustainable campus, and through this vision, we have designed a techno-socio-entrepreneurial ecosystem. Clear policy direction and strategies, systematic programs, and sufficient infrastructure are critical components of this ecosystem. This kind of the challenges we are dealing with, and we need to come up with the new mindset, new system where the collaboration is a must. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please. Dr.
Yes,
Kevin,
indeed. Look, sort of building on what both speakers have said to date, I do think that strategy coming from the top is really important. At RMIT, we have a new strategy, and it's got quite a horizon. It's titled Knowledge with Action. It's a very simple title, but it's really about acquiring that knowledge, but actually doing something that is impactful. And it's really clear in that strategy, which is constantly referred to, that this is what we want to be as a major player in the region, interdisciplinary, solving complex problems that are linked to sustainability as one of those big aspects of what we're addressing. To what Ali was, what Andrea was saying earlier, I think that in some of these questions that we need to ask, what does success look like? And having that conversation, how is success measured? How is success enabled? That comes down to this thing of support and what have you. Who is involved from an equitable perspective? And I think Professor CHEEMA sort of mentioned those things about relooking at how we do things and how we make sure that we get the right people involved. So there's not a competition that we keep competing against each other, but we're adding to something. What programs can enable this? I think from a pedagogical perspective, what we've done now is certainly in the college I'm part of, as sustainability is now linked to all programs' learning outcomes. And so we map that through to every what we call course, or some universities would call them units or what have you, or subjects, into their learning outcomes. And because we're going through AACSB accreditation, we've actually got this assurance of learning process where we've come up with standardized rubrics. So for somebody having sustainability, we'll have workshopped in a collaborative manner the variations that you could choose to feed in through assessment, and then we map which assessments sit through. So that's going down to this assurance that it's got a deep enough level, and in some cases partnering with industry with what we call work integrated learning, which is a core part of what we do. So a lot of our teaching is with industry in the classroom, not dealing with reproduced cases, but solving problems for now. And I think this comes down to how can we actually, I think Professor CHEEMA was talking about it's not just giving the knowledge to the students, but giving them a real sense of the importance of being able to recognize the complexity and look at ways of working, or to deal with potential processes or collaboration, and change the mindsets so that they're equipped to go out there knowing the sorts of realms of where that particular unit of learning fits within a broader context.
Thank you very much. Please, Andrea, if you want to add a few things.
I get the last word each time. It's great. I don't know how that happened, but so just to, I suppose, lean into the conversation, I think and I go back to our own experience because it's the one I know best, but one of the biggest challenges we had at the beginning was developing that kind of collective vision of the future. But the very next question you get asked is, okay, great, we have some idea what the future that we want to work towards looks like. How do we do it? How do we become action oriented? And how do we bring an entire organization and region behind an action oriented approach? And we spent a long time trying to figure out how exactly we would go about doing that, because it seemed to be probably the most important second question to ask ourselves. And at the university, we're at early stages. We're setting up an engine called a mission lab. And if anyone has heard of a mission-based approach, think man or woman on the moon, effectively the notion of setting yourself a portfolio of challenges that are very ambitious, that are measurable, and that are time-bound in terms of their objectives, and then having the entire university work towards them. So we're at early stages of implementing. First of all, we co-designed 21 missions, and those 21 missions connect with the broad kind of understanding of what sustainability is. So we have a couple of missions around society, a couple of missions around planet, a couple of missions around economy, and those missions become magnets that draw action and that are measurable, so we can hold ourselves accountable in terms of the journey that we're on. But they draw, to all the other speakers' comments, they draw academics who bring their research, they draw community partnerships, they draw cross-sectoral partnerships, they draw in students, because they're not just learning in the abstract about the Sustainable Development Goals, but they're actually getting the opportunity to work on place-based challenges, which are connected with the missions. So I think, broadly speaking, we talk about the role of universities. It's not good enough anymore to just stay in the safe theoretical space, which of course has to happen and is hugely valuable. We need to really innovate in terms of mechanisms that allow us to come together to collectively work and bring about the change that's so dramatically required. So yeah, hopefully that's a little bit useful in terms of maybe an approach that can be used to engage with sustainability.
Fantastic. So thank you very much. And so I want us to shift for another question, I think another angle that relates to how do we really localize, because the SDGs are very general, they're very universal, and how do we kind of tailor it down to our own specific institution, but doing it in such a way that we are able to really, again, and I think I kind of connect to, I think, what every one of you has just mentioned, how do we connect to our local environment, local communities, local stakeholders, and create this sense of the university is not separated or isolated kind of institution, but rather something which is very much embedded within a concrete setting. So Andrea, why won't you start first now? we'll shift the
I'm happy to do that. I should mention the fact I was getting the last word.
All right, so now you're getting the first one.
Okay. Okay, just to give you I like to give specific examples in answering these questions. So the question was around how do we do more place-based work, and how do we recognize the importance of our local contexts in the way we approach sustainability. So beyond the kind of conceptual theoretical debate, which we could have, I'll give you a very specific example. So we have a specific mission within our portfolio that is around regenerating the river that flows through our campus. So it's about connecting with a place that's actually physically on our campus. And it's a place where lots of stakeholders have varied relationships, everything from the local kayaking group who work within the university with students, to local fishermen, to scientists who are checking the river quality, etc., etc. So for us, our missions, first of all, have to be anchored and experimented within our university campus as a starting point. So one of the first things we wanted to do was figure out where are the local places where we can experiment, where other people can come to and we can work collectively. Now, in the first part of our plan, those places are all on campus. So our university actually becomes a place-based living lab for experimentation around the missions that we've set ourselves. Gradually, and I can say already within the 2 years that we've been running, you start to see these place-based missions spill over into the communities. So now we have, for example, a group of fishermen who are working along the river beyond the boundaries of our university, who are now looking at how can we collectively begin to tackle the challenges associated with our river ecosystems within the region. So I think the big step is, first of all, realizing we don't have to be working on huge global projects in order to solve the UN SDGs, that many of the better answers are found because we have local knowledge and we have places that are important to us where our universities are situated. So hopefully that's a little bit useful, but that's what we've found out so far.
That is fantastic. Yeah. Thank you. Please, Professor SATRIA, if you want to continue.
I think, speaking from our experience, it is important to create programs that are driven by the clear objective of making a direct impact to the local community, particularly their economy, using sustainable solutions created or innovated by university. And IPB actively creates strong engagement with local communities through various community empowerment programs. And like what I already mentioned, but for example, One Village, One CEO. These are done with the support of local and central government as well as private sectors and NGOs. And it is obvious that collaboration is a key to achieve sustainable development goals. As we are aware of the power of collaboration, IPB is strongly committed in implementing many programs by collaborating with the stakeholders, gaining trust from partner institutions, and such social capital allows IPB to expand its network and collaboration with many stakeholders nationwide. So, for example, would be the establishment of several community learning center at IPB, such as like what I already mentioned, One Village, One CEO, OFOC, Precision Village Database, community farming schools, and agribusiness and technology. These programs are implemented with strong engagement with the local communities and with the support from various partners. For example, when we develop the program Agribusiness Technology Park, we provide seeds to the community, and the community cultivate or do farming, and then they sell their product to IPB, and then IPB distributed to 54, the biggest supermarket in Jakarta. This is kind of our collaboration with local partners, with local farmers, how we empower them and increase their welfare with open opportunity for them enter the modern market. I think it is important for IPB to push the farmers to increase the quality. And I think this partnership between IPB and traditional farmers and then IPB and the market, it is very, very important for us to prove that university should bring positive impacts to the community, especially who live surrounding the campus. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Please, Dr. CHEEMA, if you want to add a few more things.
So it kind of builds on what the earlier speakers were saying. So for us, a big challenge in Pakistan is basically stunting. And, we have, for our income levels, one of the highest rates of stunting in the global south. And part of that is related to nutritional problems, but a lot of that is related to problems around sanitation and water supply. And that's related to the breakdown of municipal governance structures. So one of the ways in which some of us have been discussing at the university to address this is to create a linkage between the city that we're in. We're part of the second largest city of Pakistan. It has about over 12 million people who reside in it. It has acute sort of crisis of water and sanitation. Is just to get students along with scholars and researchers in community partnerships to start to kind of map the deficits in cities and the underlying failures in governance and infrastructure, and to mainstream that both in terms of our courses. We've started some of those offerings over the past couple of years, but also make that a focus of our research on sustainable transformations. But sort of just having a deeper bond with just the place that we're in and giving students this push to engage deeply with the local in a very real sense would be, I think, one effective way to go about it. But I think while we're talking about the local, there is the issue of the global. And I think what's particularly important is to do comparative work because, sort of a lot of these challenges, even the local challenges, manifest in different contexts. And there's a lot of cross-contextual learning opportunities. But a lot of the challenges like climate and so on are not sort of local problems in that sense. So you have to kind of create communities or consortia of partners who are doing similar kind of work, and those could become communities of learning and action. And I think some deliberation in how to do that would really pivot the impact of the research that all these institutions that we represent are invested in.
Thank
you very much. And please, Kevin, if you want to
look, I'll just give,
this round.
Just give you one example here. So we had a similar challenge, I guess, this was mentioned by the other speakers around being place-based and being local and demonstrating some interaction with circular economy and local communities. So School of Fashion, which is one of the top fashion schools in Australia, they decided that why not start on campus in a space that we could use a repair cafe. Now, they weren't the first one to come up with the idea. That concept has been established, but it was a great way to get some fashion academics as well as fashion students and inviting the community that is both the university community of students coming together to network, but also people in the local areas. And where that campus is established is just north of the city, and the local council is encouraging circularity action in that particular space, sort of a designated space. They haven't finished designing it. That's been really successful. And what it does for our students, it showcases a mindset shift that we're supporting and doing something around what is the start of something that they have already been told, and they know from stats, you can Google it, that fashion is, and textiles is a major contributor to landfill. It's a major problem area. It's challenging and it's problematic, but if you get involved and change individuals' behaviors, you change mindsets, and you, I think, ignite that passion. And as was mentioned by the others, it's important that we connect with our communities so that we're seen to be having actionable impact.
Thank you very, very much. All right, so we have a few questions from the audience, and so I'll start with the first one. Whoever wants to answer, you're more than welcome. So the first one, how might university adapt or evolve their approaches to education and research to better address contemporary challenges related to sustainable development? I do think we touched various different aspects, but if someone wants to add anything else, or if you want to sharpen the point, we definitely need to evolve.
I'm happy to come in there, Ricky.
Yes,
if you want.
Please go ahead.
So I think there's substantive work to do, both from an educational and a research perspective. But let me give the example of education, maybe in the first instance. And I believe they're one and of the same thing. They're not separate things in and of themselves. But from an educational perspective, I think one of the biggest challenges is, it's not enough to teach students in the abstract sense about the Sustainable Development Goals. In order to motivate them to really become active citizens, I think we have to allow them to engage in purpose-driven, experience-driven, whatever words we want to use, type endeavour, where they get to connect with things that are actually meaningful to them, and they get to understand and develop both the mental capacity and the skills to actually work in complexity, and to understand, working across disciplines isn't something you learn about theoretically, even though you can. Working alongside, if you're a doctor, working alongside an engineer and a scientist, the insights gleaned because you're working collectively are so much greater than you could ever learn theoretically, let's say. So I think there's a big challenge for universities to really, really interrogate their educational approaches, the types of pedagogy or hootagogy, which I believe it's now called, which is the kind of self-determined learning approach where students are much more engaged in purpose-driven learning, where they get the opportunity to connect themselves to meaningful interventions that are going on in the sustainability space. And I think that's a big curriculum redesign, rethink for higher education in general across the board.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else want to add anything, or shall I shift to the next question?
Yes. Okay.
Yes, please. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. University needs to be firm on its commitment to achieving SDGs, and it is important to then set up clear roadmaps and subsequently integrate them into policies and turn them into action programs. For example, in our case, in our experience at IPB University, it is compulsory for all undergraduate students to do field work program for 2 months in the village. And I think it is very, very important for the students to increase their collaboration skills, to increase how to manage the conflicts. And at the same time, it is important for students to learn from the community, because community, for example, like fishers or farmers, has their own experience. I think the exchange of idea, exchange of knowledge between student and community is very important to solve the local problem. And I think with this, our policy in making the programs to become compulsory for the students to go to the field, I think to increase awareness of the students to the issues of social in the grassroots. And on the other hand, we also develop some program to follow the Ministry of Education policy regarding what we call Emancipate to Learn or Kampus Merdeka. In this Emancipate to Learn scheme, the students in the last semester, for 1 semester, are allowed to go to the field to do the program for project village projects with local people, and that's to develop many programs on issues of environment as well as on social, on economic. For example, like our program, One Village, One CEO, that we develop. And then the students at the last semester come to the village, and then they stay for 6 months to develop program. And then we can provide 20 credits for them. And I think it is very, very important and become incentive for the students to do something in the real world with the community. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. So let's shift to the second question that I think it's an interesting definition of sustainability as culture. So the question goes as how can university foster a culture of sustainability among student, faculty, and staff to further contribute to achieving sustainable development goals? So I don't know, that's a different angle, which I think interesting. And I think also for me, mostly says sometimes we kind of forget, we learn about the theoretical aspect of sustainability in class, but not often we can see a full embodiment in the architecture of the infrastructure itself. So what do you think, or to what extent that is maybe a part of culture of sustainability?
I think it's really important commitment for universities to make, because it's walking the talk that you're doing.
Yeah.
It's not always easy, but I think sort of mainstreaming, a lot of the kind of sustainability thinking in the working of the university, and I'd say also sort of mainstreaming concerns about inequalities, across gender and other dimensions into the university would be really, really important. Now, of course, different universities would have different sets of resources and governance structures to navigate, but the challenge would also unpack the complexities of mainstreaming some of those things as part of universities. And I think that's a important agenda for university leaderships to set.
Thank you very, very much. Anyone else want to add anything, please?
I might just add, yeah, I do believe that it needs to be a systemic approach from the top down in that strategy, and then supported through all those systems, so that you know, some of the questions we talked about in terms of, you know, what does it look like, how is it supported, and so that all these things are dealt with, so that it's transparent to everybody in the organization how it's actually a good thing to be a part of, and it's supported, and it's differentiated from the way things were. And the rationale behind that shift is also provided quite clearly. So again, the example that we have, and sounds like many are on this journey, is that knowledge with action. It's very clear. It's very much about everything we do, we need to have impact, and the impact is what we're going to reward. So, for example, I ended up as chairing the Gender Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Group, and we had a say or some impact on a framework that might inform Research Active. Now, what did that do? It provided governance support from the bottom up, representation from each school. Well, if we do similar types of things around sustainability, we have in the college enabling impact platforms, and it encompasses about 7 or 8 different areas that encompass all types of research across STEM, design, and business, and they're all mapped to sustainable development goals. So you've got to have that narrative of how what you're doing fits within that realm and is linked to which particular goals. So those types of things in place that reward your ability to put forward a proposal. And I think that what is culture? Culture really is normative behaviors, and we can encourage that by incentives and systems.
Excellent, thank you. Yes, please.
I was just
Andrea,
going
if you
to
want to add.
Yeah, just coming to mind. I'm thinking of Donella Meadows' wonderful work around complex systems, where she talks about the points in systems where you can intervene. And one of the most complex areas to intervene in the system is that value, moral, cultural piece, which is how mindsets are defined in terms of the way people see the world and the way they engage with the world. And to me, that seems like probably one of the most substantive challenges we have, because unless we can fundamentally change our worldviews and transition from that kind of industrial era worldview, it's very unlikely we're going to bring about the change that we actually need right systemically across the systems. And so I think it's worth maybe really thinking about that, because that kind of cultural shift and that value-based shift that has to come is one that if universities can't do it, who else is really going to take an active role in that very, very complex shift that's going to happen right across humanity? So for me, it's one of the most challenging questions there is, because I think it really, really highlights the journey we have ahead and how much connected thinking and efforts are going to happen across all higher education institutions in terms of the complexity of that challenge. So, yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I think we're kind of approaching to the end, so we have just another few more minutes. So I think it's time to, if anyone wants to say, I don't know, add a few things, or all right. So I don't know, I think I take the word to evolve, and I think all of us, it seems like as a humanity we need to evolve, and I think part of it is, of course, that we need to evolve and adapt our education system that has a prominent role within shifting toward sustainability. And thank you very much for this really super interesting panel, and thank you so much for everyone.
Thanks, Ricky.
Thank you. It was a
thanks.
pleasure. Yeah, thank you so much.
Glad to see you again.
Yes, same. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Kevin.